Hi, so my name is Christina Amandeo, and I am going to be doing my presentation on the endocrine system. Unfortunately, Loom will only allow me to record a short 5-minute video, and I know this presentation is going to take longer than that, so I am going to record it on my cell phone. I do have my laptop here, and I have my slideshow presentation here on the laptop, and I will also be submitting that through Canvas. So hopefully that is acceptable for the project. So getting started on the presentation, the first slide is what is the endocrine system. So the endocrine system uses hormones that get released into the blood. The endocrine system controls many things such as reproduction, growth and development, mobilization of the body's defenses, maintenance of much of homeostasis, and regulation of metabolism. It is the second messenger system of the body, the first being the nervous system. The endocrine system is longer acting, and it's slower to respond than the nervous system. The second slide is just a diagram of the different organs in the endocrine system, as well as some of the glands. There's also the ovaries and the testes, which are part of the reproductive system, but they do have endocrine functions. So this slide here talks about hormones / chemical messengers. So those are specialized cells that produce the hormones, which are then secreted into extracellular fluids such as the blood. The blood then sends the hormones to their target cells or organs. These hormones then control the activity of the cells in the target area, which must have a specific protein receptor. There are two hormone classes, the first being steroids, which are lipid soluble, the other being proteins, such as amine, peptides, and proteins, which are water soluble. So hormone action, water soluble / non-steroid hormones. So those cannot diffuse through the plasma membrane, so they bind to membrane receptors, which then activate a G protein. The G protein activates adenyl cyclase. The adenyl cyclase catalyzes the conversion of adenosine triphosphase to cAMP, which is the second messenger in the pathway. The cAMP activates protein kinases, which add a phosphate protein in the cytoplasm. This activates these proteins and allows them to alter cell activity. And then this slide also has a diagram of how that looks. The next slide is going to be on lipid soluble hormones / steroid hormones. So those can actually diffuse through the plasma membrane, and then they bind with the receptor in the cytoplasm. This forms a receptor hormone complex. This receptor hormone complex enters the nucleus and triggers gene transcription, The transcribed mRNA is translated into proteins that then alter cell activity. So the difference between the two, the lipid-soluble hormones actually interact directly with the cell's nucleus and the DNA, whereas the water-soluble hormones do not. And then this slide just has a diagram of how it looks for lipid-soluble hormones. The next slide is about the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. So the hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland through the infundibulum. The release of hormones is controlled by releasing and inhibiting of hormones through a series of blood vessels named the hypothalamic pituitary portal system. So the pituitary gland is broken down into two areas. So there's the anterior and the posterior pituitary. The posterior pituitary only stores two hormones and releases those two hormones, but those hormones are originally made in the hypothalamus of the brain. And then the anterior pituitary, it produces 6-ish hormones. There's one that they are not 100% sure about, so that's why they say 6-ish. The next slide is on the posterior pituitary. So that is made of nervous / glandular tissue. The two hormones produced there are oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone. So oxytocin is stored and released from the posterior pituitary. It stimulates contractions of the uterus during labor, and it also causes lactation. So it is therefore involved in positive feedback. Antidiuretic hormone is stored and released from the posterior pituitary. It can inhibit urine production and in large amounts cause vasoconstriction, leading to an increase in blood pressure. The hormones stored in the posterior pituitary are made in the hypothalamus and then sent to the posterior pituitary to be stored, like I already mentioned, but it's on the slide, so mention it again. Here is a diagram of how the hypothalamus sends those two hormones to the posterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary, so there is a series of blood vessels called the hypothalamic pituitary portal system. This delivers releasing and inhibiting hormones from the hypothalamus to the cells of the anterior pituitary. All of the hormones are proteins and act through second messenger systems. Excuse me. TSH, also known as thyroid stimulating hormone, it's called thyrotropin as well. It's sent to the thyroid, which then causes the release of T3 and T4. Adrenocorticotropic hormone, also known as ACTH, is sent to the adrenal cortex, where it regulates endocrine activity. ACTH stimulates the adrenal cortex to secrete corticosteroid hormones such as cortisol, which is one of the main ones. Prolactin is sent through the mammary glands in mammals through positive feedback. It stimulates and maintains milk production following childbirth. Gonadotropin releasing hormone is produced and secreted by the hypothalamus. It initiates puberty and stimulates the anterior pituitary to secrete gonadotropins. So one gonadotropin is follicle stimulating hormone. This stimulates follicle development in the ovaries and sperm production in the testes. Luteinizing hormone triggers ovulation in the ovaries and stimulates testosterone production in the testes. Endorphins are sent to the pain receptors in the brain. Growth hormone is sent throughout the body. It regulates human body growth, protein synthesis, and cellular respiration. The intermediate pituitary, there is a zone in between the pituitary lobes, and the cells in that zone secrete melanocyte stimulating hormone. This hormone can darken the skin by inducing melanin production within the melanocytes of the skin. It can lead to darker skin pigmentation, especially during pregnancy in combination with estrogen, but interestingly enough, lighter and darker skinned people have the same amount of MSH in their bodies. So the next slide is about growth hormone. So the diagram here goes over the release of growth hormone from the hypothalamus, and then so the hypothalamus releases growth hormone releasing hormone, and then that then stimulates the anterior pituitary to release the growth hormone. There's also details about the inhibition of growth hormone, and then it details the growth effects of the growth hormone. And then on the other side, there is information about the dysfunction of the growth hormone. So there are a few disorders that can result from the lack of growth hormone. So one of those is gigantism, which is a disorder in children caused by the secretion of unusually large amounts of growth hormone. This results in excessive growth. Acromegaly is a disorder that results in the growth of bones in the face, hands, and feet in response to excess levels of growth hormone in people who have stopped growing. Then pituitary dwarfism is caused by abnormally low levels of growth hormone in children that causes growth impairment. The thyroid gland is located at the base of the throat. It contains two lobes and a center point called an isthmus. Calcitonin is produced in the parafollicular cells. It decreases bone calcium levels by stimulating calcium salt deposit in the bones. Thyroid hormone is a major metabolic hormone and comprised of two active iodine-containing hormones. Thyroxine, also known as T4, is secreted by the thyroid follicles. Triiodothyronine is a conversion of T4 at target tissue, so then it becomes T3. T3 and T4 cause an increase in nutrient breakdown. They increase the use of oxygen to produce ATP and initiate the transcription of genes involved in glucose oxidation. Adequate levels of T3 and T4 are required for protein synthesis, and they are also required for fetal/childhood development and growth. So this just gives you a diagram about the thyroid hormone regulation and how that looks in the body, depending on whether there's an issue of too much or too little. And then the next slide is about the disorders of the thyroid gland. So this over here is a disorder where it's actually down here called goiter. But T3 and T4 deficiencies can influence libido, fertility, and other reproductive functions. Excess T3 and T4 can cause an accelerated heart rate. They can strengthen the heartbeat and increase blood pressure. Hypothyroidism is the low blood level of thyroid hormones. This causes a low metabolic rate, weight gain, cold extremities, constipation, reduced libido, and other side effects. Hyperthyroidism is the high blood level of thyroid hormones, which causes the opposite of hypothyroidism. So it causes high metabolic rate, excessive body heat and sweating, diarrhea, weight loss, tremors, and increased heart rate. Dietary iodine deficiencies can result in the inability to synthesize both T3 and T4, leading to a variety of different issues. This can lead to the oversecretion of TSH, known as hyperstimulation, which causes thyroglobulin to accumulate in the thyroid gland follicles, leading to colloid deposits. The accumulation increases the size of the thyroid gland, and that is called goiter, which we saw in the picture. The parathyroid glands are small glands on the posterior of the thyroid. They secrete parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone, PTH, stimulates osteoclasts to remove calcium from the blood. They stimulate the kidneys and intestines to absorb more calcium. They raise calcium levels in the blood when calcium is too low. So hypoparathyroidism is parathyroid hormone deficiency. This can develop following surgery or an injury involving the thyroid gland, and it can cause abnormally low blood calcium levels, resulting in muscle twitching, spasms, cramping, or convulsions. In serious cases, it can paralyze muscles and can be fatal. Hyperparathyroidism is the abnormally high activity of the parathyroid gland. This is caused by the overproduction of PTH and results in excessive calcium reabsorption of bone and can decrease bone density, which can lead to fractures. So maintaining blood calcium levels, there is a diagram here that discusses how the body maintains homeostasis involving blood calcium, depending if their blood calcium drops or the levels increase. So the adrenal glands, they have an outer cortex of glandular tissue and an inner medulla of nervous tissue. The cortex is divided into zona glomerulosa, the zona fasciculata, and the zona verticularis. The cortex is a component of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, or otherwise known as HPA axis. The medulla is an extension of the autonomic nervous system and is made of postganglionic sympathetic nervous system neurons. The adrenal cortex produces mineralocorticoids, hormones essential for fluid and electrolyte balance. So the zona glomerulosa makes aldosterone, a mineralocorticoid important in the regulation of sodium and potassium ion concentration. It's released in response to low potassium, low blood sugar, low blood pressure, or low blood volume. It is prompted when CRH from the hypothalamus triggers ACTH release. It's a key component of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. This is when specialized cells of the kidney secrete renin in response to low blood volume or blood pressure. Renin catalyzes the conversion of angiotensin to the hormone angiotensin 1, then converted in the lungs to angiotensin 2. This decreased blood flow, increases blood volume, and signals the adrenal cortex to secrete aldosterone, contributing to fluid retention, restoring blood pressure and volume. Those with hypertension can take drugs that block the production of angiotensin 2, otherwise known as ACE inhibitors. And then the zona fasciculata produces glucocorticoids, the most important being cortisol, which we discussed earlier, some of which is converted to cortisone in the liver. The cortisol promotes the catabolism of glycogen to glucose and the catabolism of muscle proteins into amino acids. So in response to long-term stress, the hypothalamus secretes CRH, which triggers the release of ACTH, therefore triggering the release of glucocorticoids. Those then inhibit tissue building and stimulate the breakdown of stored nutrients to maintain adequate fuel for the body. So over-the-counter and prescription drugs actually contain glucocorticoids that inhibit the inflammatory response of the body. So the hypersecretion of cortisol is actually known as Cushing's disease, which can lead to high blood glucose levels and the buildup of lipid deposits in the face and neck. The undersecretion of cortisol is called Addison's disease, which can lead to the opposite, low blood glucose levels and low blood sodium levels. The zona reticularis produces a small class of steroid sex hormones called androgens, which are produced in the gonads during puberty and most of adulthood. These androgens supplement the androgens in the gonads, produced in response to ACTH from the pituitary and are converted to testosterone or estrogens. In postmenopausal women, most of the estrogens produced come from this zone of the adrenal cortex. So the adrenal medulla releases hormones in response to short-term stress. It produces epinephrine and norepinephrine, but epinephrine is actually produced in greater quantities. The secretion of adrenaline and noradrenaline is controlled by a neural pathway from the hypothalamus in response to danger or stress. These hormones signal the liver and skeletal muscle cells to convert glycogen into glucose, leading to increased blood glucose levels. This leads to an increased heart rate, pulse, and blood pressure to prepare the body to fight. It also dilates the airways, raising blood oxygen levels, prompts vasodilation, and increases oxygen to important organs, and then it also causes less oxygen to be sent to less important organs, such as the GI tract, which is not essential during a fight or flight circumstance. It can also cause dry mouth, loss of appetite, pupil dilation, and a loss of peripheral vision. The pineal gland is located inferior and somewhat posterior to the thalamus. The pinealocyte cells that make up this gland produce and secrete melatonin, which actually helps us maintain our circadian rhythm and sleep. So it is released according to the level of light received from the environment, but it has been disrupted due to things such as blue lights and smartphones. It also can be influenced by traveling via aircraft over multiple time zones. So gonadal and placental hormones, so both the ovarian follicles and the testes produce inhibin, which inhibits, given the name, the secretion of FSH from the pituitary gland. So the main hormones produced by the ovaries are estrogens, including estradiol, estriol, and estrone. These are important, to the development of the ovarian reproductive system, menstrual cycle regulation, and development of secondary sex characteristics, along with the maintenance of pregnancy. The ovaries also produce progesterone, which contributes to menstrual cycle regulation and preparing the body for pregnancy. So during pregnancy, an organ called the placenta develops, which produces human chorionic gonadotropin, also known as HCG, which promotes progesterone synthesis and reduces the mother's immune function to protect the fetus. It also secretes human placental lactogen, a hormone that is important to preparing the breast for lactation and relaxin, which helps to widen the pubic symphysis to prepare for birth. The main hormone produced by the testes is testosterone. It is produced in the ovaries also, but in much smaller amounts. Important to the development of testicular reproductive system, the maturation of sperm cells, and the development of secondary sex characteristics in males, such as a beard. The pancreas, so the pancreatic islets secrete glucagon, insulin, somatostatin, and pancreatic polypeptide. So receptors in the pancreas can sense blood glucose levels and secrete insulin of glucagon. and secrete insulin or glucagon to maintain homeostasis. So glucagon is released in response to a decline in blood glucose levels. It stimulates the liver to convert its stored glucagon into glucose. It stimulates the liver to take up amino acids and convert them to glucose, and stimulates lipolysis, the breakdown of stored triglycerides into fatty-free acids and glycerol. Some of the free glycerol is sent to the liver via the bloodstream, where it is then converted to glucose. Insulin is released to facilitate the uptake of glucose into body cells. The primary targets of insulin are skeletal muscle cells and adipose cells. It reduces blood glucose levels by stimulating glycolysis, the metabolism of glucose for generation of ATP. Somatostatin inhibits insulin and glucagon release, and pancreatic polypeptide plays a role in appetite. So diabetes mellitus is a dysfunction of insulin production and secretion, along with the dysfunction of the target cell's responsiveness to insulin. Hyperglycemia is a condition when blood glucose levels are elevated. So in type 1 diabetes, that's when the body is not producing enough insulin. It's usually treated with insulin injections. Type 2 diabetes, the body is just not responding correctly to insulin, so it doesn't make sense to inject insulin when the body isn't responding correctly to them. So in that case, they would take an oral medication to help the body. So this next slide just gives you a diagram on how the body responds to either too much or too little glucose. And then the next slide, it goes over organs with secondary endocrine functions. So peptide hormones are stored and secreted in the gastrointestinal tract. Gastrin is secreted in response to stomach distension. Secretin is secreted by the small intestine as partially digested food and fluid moved from the stomach. Cholecystokinin is released from the small intestine and helps facilitate digestion as well. And other hormones produced by the intestinal cells can help with glucose metabolism. Erythropoietin is produced in the kidneys in response to low levels of oxygen. A decline in blood flow to the kidneys stimulates them to release renin, therefore triggering the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, which we touched on before. Atrial natriuretic peptide is produced and released from specialized cells in the atrial wall. This signals the kidneys to reduce the reabsorption of sodium, causing a decrease to the amount of water reabsorbed from the urine filtrate, and reduces blood volume. Decreased blood pressure, blood volume, and blood sodium levels are a result. Adipose tissue secretes several hormones such as leptin that help with lipid metabolism and storage. The skin produces the inactive form of D3, which converts to calcitrol, the active form of D3 in the kidneys. Thymosins, which are produced in the thymus, contribute to the development and differentiation of immune cells. The liver secretes 4 or more hormones: somatomedin, angiotensinogen, thrombopoietin, and hepcidin. These hormones stimulate bodily growth, raise blood pressure, cause an increase in platelets, and block the release of ions into bodily fluids. The skeleton produces at least 2 hormones. So fibroblast growth factor 23 is produced in response to increased blood levels of vitamin D3 or phosphate. Osteocalcin stimulates the pancreatic beta cells to increase insulin production, all of which are extremely important. So you don't really think as the heart or the GI tract as an endocrine organ, but they do have some endocrine functions. The last page of my slide is just a reference sheet. And thank you for your time today. Have a great day.